Okay, I got to say, when I started my week out, I didn't think we'd have this opportunity, but here's William Byron in Atlanta. We see his pictures rolling in the background there, and William just won the Daytona 500. I was listening to Herman Strader, Kenny Wallace's new podcast, on the way here, and he brought up such an interesting point, and I'm sure you've been asked it, but I got to ask, when you're 7th or 8th in line on the final lap of any race, and the checkered flag is almost in sight, what is going through your mind, and was the same kind of thing going through your mind at Daytona as it would be if you were like Michigan or something like that? You know, do you think at that point, I have a chance to win, or are you just hoping the seas part?
I mean, you're just thinking about just trying to get to the top 4 or 5. I felt like I could pretty easily get to the top 4 based on the momentum of our line. And then, there was a lot of fanning out going on in the front of the pack. So it was just trying to figure out where the momentum was going to go and sort of where the runs were going to come from. But, not necessarily thinking about winning per se. But once I got probably halfway down the backstretch, it was like, okay, at least going to be able to potentially clear the middle lane based on some of what had happened there with I guess when Cole went to the outside of Denny. So
yeah. So that didn't necessarily think, oh man, I might win this. And so when you cleared past the crash and you realized you were in the lead, was there any doubt to you that Tyler Reddick could catch you at all? I mean, I know you just stayed in it, the race stayed green.
Yeah, I don't, because he didn't have any help behind him. I felt like I was like, man, I think he's too far back to get enough of a run. Things are happening so slow at that point. You're like, okay, how can I make my car kind of wide in case he does get there? But I think that, I was nervous because I've never had that situation with this package in this car, where you're that far out in front and you have basically a quarter of a lap to go. So I was nervous that he could get a run based on the way this car is. But, yeah, it just worked out. There was just enough time, to get back to the line.
Yeah, and I know both races ended that you've won in a row have ended strangely, I guess. But did this one feel does this one feel a little less strange than last year because it was the determination when the caution light came on? Did you feel like, hey, I raced my way through a crash and I was first in the checkered flag? Or, I mean...
I don't know. I don't really care. I think, honestly, I cared in the moment of, like, it was hard to process in the moment of how it happened. And but I think once you get out of the car and you celebrate with your team, you're just thinking about, the joy of winning the event, and, all that kind of goes away. So, yeah, in the moment, I mean, it was definitely crazy circumstances and a weird way to win. So I didn't really know how to react on the radio or right when I got out of the car. But really just you think about your team and how much effort they put in, and that's what means the most is what it means to those guys.
Yeah, for sure. We saw it on their faces when Rudy and everybody's running across the track. Now, there's been, of course, a lot of talk this week about does this have to always end this way? Is there anything that, there's something about the Gen 7 cars, it seems like it's harder to pull out a line and then forces people to act a certain way, and then there's a fuel saving that people feel weird about the Super Speedway race. And yet you've won, I think it's 4 Super Speedway races in the Gen 7 era, if I'm not mistaken, 2 at Atlanta, 2 at Daytona. Do you feel that way? Do you have any idea of any things you'd want to tinker with as a driver to make it more relatable?
Look, like, it's the nature of the racing. It's not really changed at all in my eyes over the last 3 years at least with this car. And so I just really said, okay, if this is what it's going to be, I have to find a way to make it work. And so I feel like I have my own style of that. But if I had control over what they did to the cars, I would take some drag off the car, because I feel like ever since we tested at Daytona with this car, it was extremely draggy, kind of slow by itself, and that just allows the leader not to get away at all. They actually get pulled back towards the pack. So if you get a couple car length lead with this car, it's a huge disadvantage. So I don't know. I feel like if you had like a crystal ball and you were like, oh, we want to make these changes, I would just take some drag off to where we can actually keep the runs going forward. But look, I mean, you can complain all you want, but it is the rules, and I mean, it's kind of the same. It's the same for everyone, I guess. So you just make do with it. I don't really focus too much on the rules, but
sure.
I think that's what I would do probably is try to figure out how you could make the car a little bit less draggy.
Less draggy. That seems to be a common thing I've heard. Was there anything, if they did that you'd want to change in horsepower at all in Super Speedway package? Because isn't it higher than it used to be, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean I think the problem is you'd have to work both of them together, because if you take drag off, the cars are going to go faster. Now I feel like we're maybe going slower than what we used to, but there's still some flipping going on. So I don't know. It's a whole equation.
Yeah,
a lot of politics.
Yeah,
I try to stay out of it.
You're not an engineer.
Drive.
That's good. That's a smart thing to do. What do you think the fundamental difference is between Daytona and Atlanta, since you've won it both, and what do you think your chances are coming up here for the Emmett Hill 400?
I feel good about it. I think we have put a lot of effort into this week. My guys have been working hard, and they feel really good about it. We had a good run here in the fall. We had a good car, led a few laps, and I felt like my car handled well. So it's just going to take a combination of handling and being able to draft well. So I look forward to it. I think it's kind of a chill weekend. Not a lot of practice or anything like that. It's just kind of go into the race, and that takes a little bit of adaptation once the race starts. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm just ready to get back racing. Get back to doing what we do best. Yeah,
that does sound like a lot of fun too. And then, is there anything that you all account for as far as the track aging in Atlanta? It's already looking more gray than it did, when it first started. Are you worried about grip levels at all? How does that get accounted for in the engineering brew, I guess, or do you stay out of that?
No, you definitely account for it. I think that's been the direction the track's been going. So just you're looking more at what the first stage looks like, and that might continue. That might be what the race looks like as it goes along. But this asphalt that's on the track is very similar to Texas. It looks different, like it looks like it's losing grip, but it has kind of a thin layer of sort of dust or whatever that lays on the top that makes it appear different, but it gains grip as the race goes on. So typically you see, like by the end of the Atlanta race, everyone's all packed together again because the track's sort of worn in. So I don't know how it's going to age necessarily. Texas has kept a lot of its pace over the last few years, so we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And then lastly, I asked you before we started recording if this week was crazier versus last year. You said it was crazier. Do you have like a crash, not a crash bag, that's not the best word, but like a overnight bag or like something extra you pack just in case you win the Daytona 500? Or do you have to stop at Ross in Daytona or some store? Like, what do you do?
Honestly, no, I didn't have like any sort of preparations for winning the race. I mean, I just had all my weekend stuff packed, but it was nice because we got a chance to go back home for a couple hours on Monday, so we got a chance to, literally 3 hours. So yeah.
Did you get any sleep Sunday night?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Oh
yeah, but it was worth it for sure.
It certainly was. Well, two-time Atlanta winner, back-to-back Daytona 500 champion, and William Byron. Thanks for spending some time with us here on the 5 to Go podcast.